Good evening, everyone. Can you all see my slide? You all can use the text chat box to reply. Uh, just a second. I just stopped presenting. We'll start the class in few minutes. Just we'll wait for a few more minutes maybe. Okay, let's start. Good evening, everyone. Those who all have joined, and today is basically I'll be conducting the live session on the subject on the NPTEL course that you have enrolled for, that is Introduction to History of Architecture in India. But before I start, I need some confirmation if my screen is visible and if I am audible enough or not. Yes, please. You all can use the chat box to respond. Anyone can respond. Yes, can someone please just confirm that whether I'm audible and whether my screen is visible or not to everybody? Let me ask someone. Rashmi, am I visible and audible as well as my screen is visible? Okay, Priya. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's start. Okay. So I think by now you all have gone through the 5 videos that were there in the course for week 1. So I am Purvita Shamanto. So I am a Prime Minister's Research Fellow from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. And today's session is basically conducted like we'll have a total of 4 sessions. Like this is the first week. So every week on Tuesday we'll have this session. So this is basically a doubt clearing and interactive session that we'll have for this particular course. Now we have weekly interactive sessions every Tuesday, 6 to 8 p.m. till the course runs. So the course is for 4 weeks. So we'll have our this interactive session for 4 weeks only. Okay. Now how do we interact in this class? So we answer the questions that are asked in the chat box. Okay. And we also post the questions in the chat box. We raise our hand, unmute ourselves, or and ask the queries. So this is it, and there are someone. Yeah. Okay. Now, if you okay, let me. Where was I? Yeah. How else we can clarify the doubts that are there? So we can basically we have this discussion forum. I think you have seen that. So in the discussion forum, you can post your questions, and from there, I'll maybe look into that question answer session, and I'll answer the questions in the next live session. Okay. So I'll try to like answer as much as queries that you all have. In case I cannot answer, definitely I'll look up to the questions that are raised by you people, and I'll try to solve in the next live session. Okay, so how is this particular interactive session going to help us? So this is basically I think you all have seen that there are assignments every week that are put up in the portal, so you can answer these questions easily. Now I'm not going to really answer all the questions that are given in the assignment of this particular session, but yes, we'll take a few questions from previous years, and there can be some questions which you might find that there are questions which are given in this assignment as well, and we'll try to understand some of the complex topics. I mean, the topics have already been discussed. We'll just have some kind of a recapitulation, okay, of the topics. Okay, now what did we learn in week one? So the first lecture was about early architecture. Mostly it started with, if you all remember, it started with the Indus Valley civilization, the Bronze Age, and how this Vedic civilization came with the declination of the Indus Valley civilization, and so on. Next lecture two, was about the Buddhist and early temple architecture, where we see that how this Buddhist there were these several dynasties that started, particularly it started with the Mauryan dynasty, Ashoka, and then how initially the Buddhist, the very initial cave architecture, all these things, and then slowly and gradually the lecture moved towards the early temple architecture. For third lecture, it mostly talked about sacrificial altars and divine shelters. How this cosmic axis, the all this multiplicity, and how Lord or God are basically sheltered or put inside the shelters. All these things have been discussed. And the fourth lecture was mostly about the great temples, where broadly the temple types were discussed, the Latina style, the Kutina style, and also there were several subcategories under this temple types which were discussed in details, and also there were several examples that were taken into consideration uh, during this particular uh, lecture, fourth lecture. And fifth lecture was mostly about the reviewing, right? The review of the first week. Okay, so what are we going to discuss in today's live session? So it's mostly going to be the theoretical and verbal questions. One side will have those, and the other side will have some visual questions. Okay, so comprising, like, it will be a mix of both of these types, and we will try and answer a lot of questions from you. So the first question that we will solve, that Mauryan Ashokan columns were inspired by. Yes, anybody who can answer this? Maybe you can unmute and tell the answer. Otherwise, I'll have to like go back to and fro for looking at the chat box. You can simply unmute yourself and give me the answer. Yes, anybody who can who is willing to try this question? Let me check the chat box maybe once. No one? Oh, and here you can already see the answer now. So the accepted answer is ruins of Persepolis, right? So if you all like quickly remember the lecture, you might also remember that there was this discussion on ruins of Persepolis, which is basically the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire. And if you look into the ruins that were excavated, you can definitely find that this freestanding columns, the pillars basically, these were these were found in the ruins of Persepolis, and this design of the columns or the pillars influenced the Mauryan pillars. Okay, so basically, Emperor Ashoka drew inspiration from this type of pillars, and the type of the stone craftsmanship that you see, the fluted shafts that you see. Okay, so all these things were basically, or even the capitals that you see, were basically a kind of the this design of the Persepolian, from the ruins of Persepolis, were imitated in the Mauryan pillars. Also, you will see the different type of motifs that were used. So, if you look at the picture carefully, you can see. I'll just show you. Yeah. So you can see here. So this is the animal. Okay, the lion, face of lion, right? And then this lotus motifs. Overall, you can see the animal figures that are there, and also you can also see the kind of grandeur this particular type of columns had, which were somewhat replicated in the Ashokan pillars. So if you look into this particular image, or these two images, you can see this image is basically one of the pillars of Ashoka in Vaishali in India. And if you look into your right hand side, you can see this is the lion capital of Ashoka from Sarnath. Obviously, this is the one which is used in used as the emblem of our country. And you can see here also, you can see the lotus motif, right? These are the lotus motif which is forming the base of the capital. And there's this national emblem. There are this, these animals which are inscribed, and there are these four heads of the lion. Okay, so this is definitely lion capital of Ashoka from Sarnath. Is it okay? Is it clear? Okay, so moving on to the next question, that is the earliest extant freestanding temple is at Sachi, is known as, yes, anybody with the answer? So the answer is basically Temple 17, but before that, let me just admit. Yeah. Okay. So if you look into the answer of this particular question, Temple 17 from the early 5th century Common Era, or CE, is basically the earliest extant freestanding temple in Sanchi. So if you look into this particular, this is the temple number 17. So it is built on a very, very simple square plan. It has flat roofs, as you can see. There's this one sanctum. Sanctum is basically nothing but the garbhagriha, okay, where the deity is placed, and a very small portico with this, there are four columns at the front, and if you look into the columns also, you can see this lotus motifs and this animal figures over here. Okay, and this is basically the curved pillar that you see here. Okay. So this is also, can somebody tell me that during which period this particular temple was built? Anyone? If you all remember from the lecture class. So basically this particular temple that you see, Temple 70, this was built during the Gupta period, and this is one of the, you can say, the one of the best example of the very early temple architecture of our country. Okay. Moving on to the next question, that is which of the following temple is not monolithic? Options are Kailash temple at Ellora, Arjun Ratha at Mamallapuram, Shore temple at Mamallapuram, and Cave 5 at Elephanta. So I hope you all understand what monolithic basically refers to. Yes, monolithic. Yeah,
Single,
Rashmi. Yeah, yeah. You can answer.
single stone.
Absolutely correct. Okay. So monolithic, mono, the word mono basically refers to single, right? So if you look into the answer, you can definitely see that which one is not a monolithic one. The answer is Shore Temple at Mamallapuram. Now we'll just quickly look into the options that are given, like what how they look or something like that. So the first option was Kailash Temple at Ellora. So Kailash Temple at Ellora is basically an extraordinary monolithic rock cut temple. It is said that it was built. It was carved from the top to the bottom. So you can well understand now. Also, if anybody of you have visited the Kailash temple at Ellora, you'll understand the kind of grandeur, the kind of massiveness this particular temple complex has. Okay, so this there are several intricate reliefs. Okay, that basically depicts the mythological theme of our of Hinduism, and this is one of the this is one of the best, not best, but yes, one of the best example of monolithic rock architecture. Next one that had the option that was there, that is the Arjuna Rath. So this Arjuna Rath at Mamallapuram, this is basically again this one I'll just mute
ಮ್ಯಾಮ್
because
ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ತೆರೆಯತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್.
yes.
ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ತೆರೆಯತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್.
Can you please ask the question in English?
ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ತೆರಿಲ್ಲ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್.
I can't really understand. Can you just type it? Okay. Maybe that would be better. Maheshwari, you can type out your problem. Also, just again, once again, an inquiry is everything everybody can see everything. I hope you all can.
Yes, ma'am. We
Yes.
can.
Yes. Okay, fine. Good. Okay, now coming to the Arjuna Ratha at Mamallapuram. So this is again an example of this monolithic rock cut architecture, which was built during the 7th century under the Pallava dynasty. So Pallava dynasty is one of the very prominent dynasty in the southern parts of our country. And if you again go back and just have a check at this Arjuna Ratha at Mamallapuram, this is basically a part as one of the temple within a temple complex. So there are several rathas: the Arjuna Ratha, the Bhim Ratha, there's this Dharmaraja Ratha. Okay, so a total of 5 rathas are actually there, along with some monolithic sculptures of elephants, animals basically. And within that, there's this one prominent ratha that you can see, which is basically known as the Arjuna Ratha. And if you look into the kind of architectural style this particular ratha has, you can definitely, understand that this is an example of the Dravidian style or the Kutina style of architecture, where you see there are these small huts, right? These huts. This thing has been, discussed in the video lectures a lot of number of times, that there's this representation of huts, and the huts are basically built. I mean, they are assembled together, and then this type came out. So these huts are nothing but, if you remember, the other name of Dravidian style is Kutina, which is basically a more technically correct term to use. So kutinas are basically, they are made of kutas and shalas. They are nothing but huts, and the kutas are basically square shaped in plan. On the other hand, the shalas are a bit longitudinal. They are rectangular huts. Okay, and these small units they form the aedicules, right? So this basically comprises of, these are basically placed on one top of, like, they are arranged in a way such that the horizontality of the the top part is maintained. Not only the top part, the entire style, if you see, this horizontality is maintained. And on top, if you see, it is basically again a bigger hut is placed. So this is basically the Kutina style, and this form, the pyramid, if you see, it's something, it looks like that of a stepped pyramid roof. Okay, so this is Arjuna Ratha. The next option that we had, that is the Shore Temple at Mamallapura. Now, this short temple at Mamallapuram is the correct answer because this is not a monolithic rock cut temple. Rather, it is a temple which is assembled. I mean, there are several parts were constructed or sculpted out, and they were basically assembled together to form this entire big temple. So this is located on the shores of Bay of Bengal, and if you look into if you look into this photograph, you'll be able to understand that there's this this rectangular sanctum, the garbhagriha basically, and on top of that what we have is the pyramid shaped shikhara. Also, this is an example of the Kutina style of architecture, Kutina style of temple architecture, which is again comprising of these smaller huts, that is the kutas and the shalas. They are placed at in a particular order, and on top of this you have a bigger hut. Okay, so that is a Shore temple which was built during the Pallava dynasty also. And the last option that you had seen, that was cave 5 at Elephanta. So Elephanta cave is basically it's near Mumbai, and this is again one of the largest and one of the very important rock cut temples which is dedicated to Lord Shiva. As you can see over here, from the image you might not be able to understand entirely the interior, but yes, you can get an understanding that how this caves were basically, how they were like carved out of the rocks. And this caves architecture basically includes a hypostyle hall. When I say hypostyle, the word style basically refers to pillars, okay, or columns. Okay, so you can understand that there's this hall which is having columns all around. Okay, large pillars are there, and they are basically intricately carved with several scenes from the Hindu mythology. Okay, okay. So if you all have understood this, the next question that we have, that is the earliest excavated cave architecture in India dates to. So the answer, before you all give the answer, I'll just, yeah. So basically, the answer is, accepted answer is 200, 300 to 200 BCE. So BCE, the term BCE, basically it's nothing but it stands for before Common Era. Now, what is this? I mean, in a lot of in the entire lecture, you might have come across, this the term before, something 6th century AD or 6th century CE, something like this. So basically, previously, what we used to do, there was this use of the terms called before Christ, BC, and there was also this term called AD, Anno Domini. So this basically referred to the time period before the birth of Christ, and that is BC. And there was this AD, that is Anno Domini, which basically referred to the time after the birth of Christ. But BCE, which basically stands for before Common Era, this is more of a, you can say, more of a secular term, which again denotes the years before the start of the Common Era. Again, it corresponds to the traditionally that we recognize the year of birth of Jesus. Okay, so it's something like a, you can say, a kind of a timeline. So there's zero, okay, from which the BC starts, so before Common Era. So anything which is, you know if somebody says that there's 300 BCE, so it's basically 300 years. This is the Common Era, sorry. So anything which is before this zero, the central, you can say, uh, that basically refers to the before Christ, that I just mentioned, refers to something like 300 years before the birth of Christ. So this is something which refers to the Gregorian calendar as well. So anything, when I say that third, something like this. Okay, or maybe not a BC, maybe you'll find the term used as third century, you know, some later on you'll find that third century or something like this, third CE. Okay, so it basically refers to the years after. And when you see the term BCE, you basically refer it basically refers to something like this. So the scale is in a reverse way as that of the century era, the time that starts from the birth of Jesus, the time period that starts from 1 CE, the century era, or AD. Okay. Now, with that, if you look, as I said, that the accepted answer is 300 to 200 before, Common Era BCE. So we'll just have a look at what kind of, caves or what kind of architecture were there before, say, during this BCE period that we are referring to. So one of the oldest, surviving example of Indian rock cut architecture is the Barabar caves. So this Barabar caves, if you see, this is located in Bihar, and it dates back to 3rd century BCE. So 3rd century BCE is basically nothing but 300 to 201 or something like this, 200 basically, uh, before CE. Okay, before Common Era. So similarly, you might also find the term second BCE. So again, this is something like 201 to 100 before Christ era. Okay, so and so on. Now, if you look into this Barabar caves, the example of which has been repeated in the lecture classes as well. So, these were basically primarily used as Buddhist viharas. Now, again, if you like go back and try and understand what these viharas are nothing but the places where the monks used to stay, the Buddhist monks used to stay, right? So this is basically this Barabar cave. They are example of this. They are used where they were used for Buddhist viharas, and as you see, the interiors were very they had this very smooth polished interiors and very simple designs. The examples which are very very prominent includes the Lomas Rishi cave. So the image which has been provided over here. So this features an very early arched doorway. Also, if you look into the kind of doorway design that is there, you can definitely understand that this is some kind of a replicability of the wooden architecture, the wood architecture that it was there. Okay. Also, this caves, of course, it was it is associated with the with Buddhism. However, these caves later became very very significant to the Jains as well. Again, going back to the lecture classes, if you remember that Buddhism, Jainism, they almost started coming up during the same timeline. Okay, and that is how in Jainism, Buddhism, and Hinduism, these three religion, their expression in the architecture is basically interrelated. Okay. Also, there are some other older cave examples. For example, if you see the Bhaja caves, Bhaja and Karla caves, basically. So this is located in Maharashtra. This is also another group of rock cut Buddhist caves which dates back to 2nd century BCE, which is a bit newer as compared to the Barabar hills. Also, the site includes several caves, out of which cave number 18 is very prominent because it has the Chaitya hall. So, Chaityas are basically nothing but places where it's basically the prayer halls, right? As simple as that. And this particular cave 18, this has a very intricately designed archway, and also there's a stupa at the end, which again symbolizes the presence of Buddha. Okay. And also, I am sure you all have seen and heard about the Ajanta caves. So, this is also located in Maharashtra. And this Ajanta caves is basically it's a group of 29 rock cut Buddhist caves are there. Again, it dates back to 2nd century BCE to 6th century CE. Okay, so it started before the common era. I mean, it started from before the common era, and it continued for a long period of time. So it basically if you remember the zero mark, so it started somewhere at 200 and then it continued till 6th century C. Also, if you see the caves of this Ajanta, you'll understand that they primarily consisted of these viharas, the places where the monks stayed, and they also had this chaityas. And at the end of the chaityas, there was this, this stupa things. Okay, and again, there were several murals that depicted the life of Buddha. Okay, also, I hope you all know that Ajanta Caves is considered as the UNESCO World Heritage Site, right? Okay. Coming to the next question, which is basically this particular question I have already, to some extent I have discussed. But yes, we have the two main types of temple superstructures, which are, yes, someone can answer.
Latina and Kutina.
Very good. So the answer is Latina and Kutina. Latina, this is basically a lot of, in the lecture videos also you have heard that this Latina type is basically the type which is prominently seen in the North India, and this is also sometimes referred as the Nagara style of temple. But as mentioned in the lectures also, the more technical term for this type of architecture, this type of temple architecture that is seen in northern parts of India is Latina. So if you look into the details of or the architectural features of this Latina style of temple, you can see that this particular image that you see, this is nothing but the measured drawing of Kandaria Mahadeva temple, which is a prime example of the Latina style. Again, Latina styles are of, Latina can be divided into various subcategories as well. We will discuss a bit about it as well later on. But prior to that, let me just discuss that from this Latina style. This is basically a type of, temple style where it focuses, the style basically focuses on the verticality. Again, this verticality is linked to the cosmic axis, the vertical axis that connects, the cosmos, that connects this verticality basically is connecting the cosmos, right? Cosmic axis that has been referred in the lectures as well. So if you look into this Latina style of temple, you'll see that the verticality is maintained with the help of spires. So there's a central spire, as you can see in this image also, that there's this central spire which is topped by something called the amlakas. Okay, so the amlakas are a very important feature in the Latina style temple. And the word Latina, okay, this word Latina is basically derived from the word lata. Again, lata means creepers. Okay, so from where it gets this particular verticality that you can see, I hope you can understand why the term Latina is used. Okay, now this Latina type, also if you look into it from the plan, so this portion, this part that you see, if you just draw the projections, you can understand that this part is the Garbh Griha. Okay, and then there's a very small transitionary area, right? So the transition area is nothing but the vestibule or antarala. This is also known as vestibule. Okay, and this one is basically the garbhagriha, where
So
the,
sorry to interrupt you, ma'am.
yes, yes.
But if you're showing any sharing your screen, we are not able to see that. We can just
Oh,
see the questions.
is it so?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, now we can.
No, no, no. That was what I was asking previously also. Just a second. I'll just stop presenting and I'll again reshare. Just tell me if you can, because I'm drawing on it. Okay. So let me just tell me whether you can see the uh, things or not. I'm writing on it. If you can, you see it with red pen.
Yes, ma'am, we can now.
Now you can see. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
There must be some. Yeah. This was
Okay.
something which is I was asked. Okay, let
Oh,
me just draw it once again. So if you look into this particular style, Latina style, I think you can see this kind of verticality. Okay, as I explained earlier also, I'll just repeat it while I explain once again, that this came from the term lata, which means creepers, and that is from where this type of this Latina style temple gets the name. Also, what is unique to this Latina style temple is the placement of the amlakas on top, right? Okay, now if you look into it from the plan, so there's this, so this part that you see, so if you visit, you'll understand that this is nothing but the Garbhagriha. Okay, then there's this small transition area you can see in the elevation. Okay, so this transitionary area is nothing but the Antarala or the vestibule. Okay, and then if you see, there are, it is stopped, I mean there's a particular space which is again on top of it, you can see there's this, you know, this another pyramid shaped thing. So this is the mandapa. Okay, so this is mandapa. In case of Kandariya Mahadeva, this is referred to as the Mahamandapa. But yes, the mandapas can be of various shapes and can be of, you know, maybe two or three in number. So it depends upon the type of, you know, what to say, the type of temple that is there. Okay. So this is what Latina style temple is. The next one that we see, that is the Kutina style. So again, Kutina style is something which is seen in the southern parts of our country, and I have already mentioned that when I say Kutina, it basically the term came from kutas. Okay, so kutas are basically huts, right? It can be of square shaped. It can be of, sorry, it can be of bit longitudinal or a rectangular one. So the square shaped are known as kutas, and the longitudinal ones, the rectangular shaped, are known as shalas. If you look into it from the, we have seen in one of the example prior to it how the spire, how the top portion of Garbhagriha is basically how, you know, the kutas and shalas are placed to get the top shikhara part of it. Okay, so if you look at it from the plan, obviously there's Garbhagriha and there's mandapa also, which is a part of the temple complex, which is very you know, unique to the southern, uh, to this Kutina style, is basically gopurams. Okay, gopuram is not something that you will find in the Latina style of temple architecture. Also, another thing, this the Kutina style, most of the temple complex that you will see is basically within a enclosure. So you have an enclosure. There's this is, you can consider it to be as the Gopuram, the entrance way. Gopuram is nothing but the doorway or the entrance way to the temple complex. The temple complex is enclosed by a wall, and you'll find the main temple complex somewhere in between, like this, the main temple complex. Right? I hope you all can see my drawing. Okay. So this is how the Kutina style of architecture is mostly. Also, if you see on top of the shikhara, you won't find any amlaka. Rather, you'll find a bigger version of the hut being placed on top of the shikhara. Okay, or on top of the Garbhagriha. Garbhagriha is something that you see in the plan, and if you look at it vertically from outside, if you see at it, so that's basically the hut, bigger hut that is placed on top of the, you know, the topmost part of the temple. Okay, so this is, there are several examples. For example, I mean, we have already discussed about the Shore temple. There's Minakshi temple, there's Brihadeshwara temple, and so on. I mean, there are a lot of examples of the Dravidian style of architecture. Okay, so also another thing to remember is when we talk about the Latina style, that is for the North Indian style. North Indian style is more about verticality, whereas the Kutina style is more about horizontal bands. So you have to understand that whenever you see a Kutina style temple, you'll be able to differentiate, or you'll be able to understand that there's this horizontality, some kind of horizontal bands are there, and it is somewhat less vertical as compared to the Latina style. Okay, so these are the two very basic ways to understand the Latina style and Putina style. And of course, there's another style that has been discussed in the lecture as well, that there you'll find some of the temples which are a mix of both Latina and Putina somewhere in the central parts of our country, and that particular style is known as Veshwara style. Okay, I hope you all remember Veshwara style. Okay, so you'll find that there's this combination of both Latina and Kutina. Okay, now coming to the next question, that is a Hindu temple is, you all can answer by unmuting, a shelter for divinity, a model of heaven, a place for cooking, a place for the king. Of course, it's not a place for cooking. I mean, definitely we all understand that. But apart from that, the other options that you see, what is the answer? Can someone answer? Yes,
Divinity.
yeah, very good. So you all understand. I mean, you all can again go back to the lectures, and you all will. I mean, even I have discussed that how the temples, Hindu temples, are basically linked with the cosmic axis. How the deities are placed. How Shiva is basically, placed in the Garbhagriha, and also there's this, how Shiva has been. I mean, there has been this concept of verticality, the multiplicity that we have seen in the Hindu temples, all again linked to the divinity of a particular place. Okay, let's discuss about the next question, that is Buddhist viharas are. We have already, I mean, I've already to some extent I've discussed about it. What will be the answer? Yeah,
It's B,
Ma'am,
residential
residential or
arrangements for
monk.
monks.
yeah, yeah, both of you are correct. Sorry, I can't see your name right now because of the slideshow mode, but yes, it's the residential arrangements for monks. Okay, so the Buddhist vihara. So this basically refers. This term vihara is nothing but it refers to the dwelling units, the places where the Buddhist monks stay. So it's something like that of a monastery. Nowadays, what we see as monastery, right? So that is it. So Buddhist viharas, they generally have some, architectural features. For example, meditation halls, a place where the monks can gather, they can meditate, and they can basically, generally, if you look into the very old viharas, obviously you won't find any statue or image of the Buddha, but current day viharas or the monasteries that you see, of course, these halls, the meditation halls are adorned by several statues or images of Buddha. Also, there are, if you, I mean, I'll just try to draw it in the plan. So this can be something like this, okay, and maybe this is the entrance way. I'm not drawing anything else. So this middle portion that you see, so this middle portion is basically the meditation hall, okay, where the monks can meditate. Attached to it, you can find there are some cells or rooms. Okay, so these are basically the living quarters or cells for the monks where they stay. And also here somewhere you can see that in some of the viharas there can be some stupas or some shrines. Okay, also there used to be some kind of community spaces for this monks, and these community spaces were basically the spaces where they can have their meal, they can have some kind of discussion and activities for monastic communities. Okay. Okay, next, moving to the next question, that is the Indus Valley civilization was known for.
Planet drainage system.
Yes,
Great iron planning of streets. No, no,
yes.
it's drainage
Impact
system.
Zambe.
Yeah, I think it's all of the above, right? Because of course, Indus Valley civilization, if you can see, uh, from the images also. So Indus Valley civilization is it's the earliest civilization that has been excavated, and this basically, if you just recall, you'll understand that this was flourishing towards the northwest part of the Indian subcontinent. And if you look at the timeline, it's something around 3300, that is 3300 BCE up to 1300 BCE, very very prior, I mean quite older than that of the first remnants that we have for the Buddhist architecture, and later on the Hindu architecture, right? We have Buddhist, the earliest excavated caves are that of Barabar caves that were excavated, which whose timeline is something around 300 BCE. And you can understand that the Indus Valley civilization flourished even 3000 years before that. So obviously it spanned the several parts of Pakistan, the current day Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, where major cities like Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, even Lothal and Rakhigari. Lothal and Rakhigari are the sites. I'll just write the names. Lothal and Rakhigari. So these are the sites which are excavated in India, the current day India. And Lothal is like it's considered that it was one of the most important port during that particular time, during the Indus Valley civilization. If you look into the features of Indus Valley civilization, so you can see that of course it had brick architecture. So clay sunburnt bricks were used. Okay, then gridiron planning of streets. Also, in the video lectures, you have seen that how the drainage system were placed, and the rectangular units, how the square and rectangular units are basically there in case of this particular civilization. And of course, the drainage system was very very planned. This is very unique because even the contemporary civilizations that were there of this Indus Valley civilization, even they didn't have so much of this planned drainage system with inspection chambers, right? Okay, so that's Indus Valley civilization. Now moving to the next question, that is Buddhist architecture before 400 before century era comprised of. So just quickly refer to your zero scale. Okay, we talked about 300 BC, we talked about something 200 BC. Sorry for my scale, I mean, it will be something a bit 100 BC. Now it is talking about something that happened before 400 century era. Okay, so we have 400 maybe somewhere here. Yeah, what is the answer?
Option D, none of.
Absolutely. Very good. Excellent. It's none of the above. Right. Because even the Sanchi Stupa, I mean, what is the question? Buddhist architecture before 400 BC. We have already seen that, the caves, the Barabar caves, those were basically I mean, those who were found had a timeline of 3rd century BC, which is something around 300 to 200 BC, or maybe 250 BC. Okay, but the question is, before 400 BC, what were the what was the Buddhist architecture like? And if you look at the options, the option of stupa, the oldest stupa that was found is basically the Sanchi stupa. Okay, and the Sanchi stupa was initially commissioned by Emperor Ashoka. Can you please mute yourself? Oh, yeah, it's fine now. Yeah. So even the oldest stupa, that is the Sanchi stupa, was built something around 3rd century BC. So again, 300. This is 200. Let me draw it properly. And if this is 0, and if this is 400 BCE, so this is the BCE, and this is basically the century. So Sanchi Stupa was also built somewhere in this particular period. Okay. So obviously before 400 century era, we do not have any kind of information, and the oldest one that is there is basically from 3rd century BC. So the answer will be none of the above. Very good. Okay. Now the next question number 10, that is in Western India, particularly Gujarat, Western Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, a unique type of temple superstructure was which one? Kalinga, Shikhari, Bhumija or Famsana?
Is it Bhumija?
Yes, it's Bhumija, absolutely correct. Okay, before I just start with the yeah. So let me just quickly discuss about this Bhumija style. So if you all remember the Latina style, so the Latina style has several. Sorry, tennis. Yeah, I hope you can see the writing that I'm doing. If not, just inform in that case. Okay, so the Latina style, uh, it's basically, you can say that it's broadly said that when we talk about the Latina style, you'll understand what Latina style is. It's basically the style that is seen in northern parts of India. But even in the northern part of India, there are several places which shows some kind of specific style of architecture. So Bhumija style is one of them. The other ones include one, the Kalinga style and also the Shikhari style. Okay. Bhumija style is something that we see in the western part of our country. Kalinga style is something that we see in the eastern part of our country. And Shikhari, you can say somewhat, the other central northern part. Okay, so that is what Shikhari style is. Now, if you look into this Bhumija style, you can see that if I just draw it, I mean, if I just try and simplify it, so this is basically the center part. Okay, now what happened over the years? There are these projections, right? Now what happened? Maybe the central part is something, this is having the amlaka and the central, this is the central spine. But the other ones, the surrounding ones are basically topped by smaller shrines or sorry, smaller spires. Okay, so they are basically covered by smaller spires. But if you look into the kind of style, if you look into the style of this Bhumija, you will understand that this horizontality is maintained. Okay, so although I mean it has this grid-like shikhara, but the style, the projections, okay, the shrine, top, the upper part is basically, it's distinctly different from that of the Shikhari style that we see. Shikhari style, you have seen it in the example that we were discussing earlier for the Latina style. That was one of the best example is definitely the Kandaria Mahadeva temple. So in Bhumija style, you can see this horizontal bands. Even here in this image also, I hope you can understand that there are several smaller spires. But the spires are still maintaining that some kind of horizontality. Okay, so I mean, there are various examples, but yes, notable examples include the Gondeshwar temple in Maharashtra as well as the Ambarnath temple in Maharashtra. Okay, the other one, I was just discussing about this, the Shikhari style. So Shikhari style, what happens? So this is basically the, the base, you can say, and there's this top spire, the central spire, which is topped by Amlaka. Okay, and if you see, there are projections, right? There are projections in the plan. Now they are basically how they will be covered? So they are covered with the help of, sorry, I'll just redraw it because I did a bit of a mistake. So if you look, I just redraw. So there are these projections in the plan, right? There's this central spine which is there, so a spire which is there, so which is topped by Amlaka. Now the smaller projections that you see, they are covered by spires which are of lesser height. So this is how the Shikhari style basically looks like. It looks like some kind of, the mountains, some kind of this descending order you'll find. So if you see, this is the topmost, Shikhari, and then there's these smaller ones at several heights. So you'll find another one at this height, you'll find another one at this height. Okay, so it resembles the mountain peak. The Shikhara resembles the temple tower that we call Shikhara, that resembles the temple peak. So it's more vertical as compared to the Bhumija style. Okay. And if you look into the plan, of course, you will again find that there's Garbhagriha, the sanctum basically. There's this Antarala, the changing, the transitionary one, which is also known as the vestibule. And there are Mandapas. Mandapas are basically nothing but pillared halls where several rituals used to happen, or it happens basically. Okay. Again, Mandapas can be of several sizes, it can be of several numbers. As for example, in case of Kandadiya Mahadeva, there's Mahamandapa, the bigger hall. Then there's the normal, smaller mandapa. Okay. The other style that I was talking about, that of the Latina temple architecture, that is the Kalinga architecture or the Kalinga style of architecture. So in case of Kalinga style of architecture, here also you'll find, so this is mostly prevalent in what we call as today's Odisha. Okay. So this place you'll find this Kalinga style of architecture. Here also you'll find that the Shikhara, okay, the temple tower basically, it's topped by this Amlaka, okay, Amlaka and the Kalasha. And the main Shikhara, basically, you can see that it's very, very, it is having this horizontality. But at the same time, you'll find that when it comes to this Kalinga style of architecture, there are certain elements which you might not find in other style. For example, the small bands that you see in this Shikhara. So this is something which you won't find in Bhumija, or you won't find it in the Shikhari style. Also, there's just one central spire. There's just one central spire, and you won't find smaller spires all along the Shikhara. So this is again something which this Kalinga style of architecture has. Okay. And in front of the Garbhagriha, you'll find this again. This is the Mandapa. This is the Mandapa. And the roof of Mandapa is somewhat pyramidical. Okay. So this has a lot more horizontality. The horizontal lines are very much prominent in case of Mandapa. Okay, so this is Kalinga architecture. And you can see there is this several nomenclature for each of the smaller smaller elements that we find in case of each and every type of architecture. Also, let me just tell you that the nomenclature or the naming of different parts of the temple are a bit different in case of Kalinga architecture. For example, the Shikhara that we were referring to, the central spine or the spire, the tallest, the tower basically, which is covering the Garbhagriha, that is referred as Rekha Deul, okay, in Kalinga architecture. And the Mandapa that we are talking about, that is referred as Jagmohan, okay. So it's the Rekha Deul and the Jagmohan that is there in case of Kalinga temple architecture. Okay. Now coming to the next question, question number 11. So that it says that all the text related to altars and sacrifices during the Vedic age that eventually becomes the basis of Vedic mathematics are described in. So this particular part you will find in lecture number two. Sorry, lecture number. I think one only. Yeah, lecture number one. Okay. Yeah. Anybody can answer this if you all remember.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
first, fifth, 10th question answer. Tell me, ma'am, please.
You all know this answer? I'll go to the answer definitely. The answer is Shulbha Sutra. Okay. So Shulbha Sutra is basically it's an ancient Indian text. Uh, this text is about how the the altars basically will be. The altars are basically the sacrificial areas, and how they should be designed was based on some kind of geometry. Okay, now this how the geometry will be. Those are were basically mentioned in the Shulva Sutras, and the Shulva Sutras are basically they were treated as the manuals of geometry and mathematics. Later on, this Shulva Sutras were I mean they were definitely used by the Vedic altars for any kind of religious rituals, but also the Shulva Sutras formed the basis of mathematics in our country. Okay. Also, you'll find that there are several other sutras during this Vedic age, for example, Dharma Sutras, Grajya Sutras, the Shrauta Sutras. But yes, that's not, right now, they are not of any concern for us. But the Shulva Sutras are something which has been mentioned in the lectures, and I hope you all remember the name. Okay. Acha. The last question that we have from the theoretical or the verbal questions, that is question number 12. What are some of the common representations of Buddha in the early ages? This has been repeated quite a number of times in the video lectures. And what is the answer? Can someone tell?
C.
See,
Crown, umbrella,
Yes,
tree.
yes, correct. So the option C is correct. Crown, umbrella, trees. If you remember that there were several images that were shown in the lecture that showed the the sculptures of some columns. Okay, maybe particularly during the Mauryan period, where you will find that there were these representations of trees, they were representation of huts, they were representation of umbrellas. Okay, so this was also one of the question that was asked in the question answer, the discussion forum as well, that why suddenly umbrella, okay, is representing Buddha. This is mostly because when we talk about the term umbrella, what is the use of umbrella? Umbrella is used for protection. Okay, so this umbrella signified some kind of protection. It signified the royalty. If you all know about the life of Buddha, so Buddha is basically he came from a very royal family. But he I mean he left everything and came for achieving moksha under the Bodhi tree. So this Bodhi tree is again the trees, the representation of trees that we see. So this Bodhi tree basically symbolizes the enlightenment or the growth, okay, or the harmony of nature. And you can understand how this tree is, the representation of tree is such an important association with that of the life of Buddha. Okay, so umbrella, trees, and also sometimes we have seen the use of crown. Why crown? Because again, crown is basically it is a representation of the royal heritage. It's a representation of the spiritual sovereignty. Okay, and the kind of transcendence over the worldly desires is represented with the help of crown. So what happened? Buddha, he was born in a in a royal family, but what he did, he left all the worldly desires. Okay, and he became a very a person who left everything and then attained enlightenment. So again, crown represents that royal heritage of Buddha. Okay, so all the symbols that you see, you might have come across in the different scriptures, in several several pillars and all. It is nothing but a reflectance of the journey of Buddha from a prince to an enlightened teacher. Okay, so this is something. This is the representation. Also, if you remember that there were several times where huts were basically there. So huts again, it is nothing but the place where the teacher, okay, the teacher will stay. Also later on, you will see that the simple huts that were there, ultimately it transitioned into some nation, the princely mansions. Okay, so because it was symbolized that when there's some teacher, a teacher can not just stay in a very simple hut, but rather over the years it transitioned into some kind of a mansion that were represented. Okay, and if you see the temples also, the Kutina style temple, that same adequates, the huts were basically replicated, or you can say they were placed in alternatives to form a bigger temple, and the shikhara, the central tower of the temple, were again topped with a bigger hut. Okay, so that's the entire, I mean, lecture and some of the questions that were there, which are commonly asked. Now for the next part, we will identify some buildings. Okay, or some, I mean, if not buildings, but yes, some architecture which are related to the lectures that we have that is done. So yes, can someone recognize this? This is also one of the picture that was shown in the lecture. So this is the cave at Kondivate, or a lot of you might hear it as Kondavite or Kondivite. There are several pronunciations to it, but yes, this is one of the earliest cave which had a representation of timber hut inside the cave. Okay, which is thought of as a place where the teacher used to stay. Okay, and the teacher's disciples would stay in the space in front of the hut, the bigger hall that was curved inside the cave. Okay, okay, this is a very common image, I can say.
This
And
is Konark
yeah, and
Sun
this is
Temple.
an, yeah, absolutely correct. So this is the Konark Sun Temple of Orissa, and as you have understood in the lecture as well, that this is not the full temple version that we see, right? So this is just the mandapa that is there. Rather, the entire garbhagriha. I mean, something. The tower would be something like this, the shikara would be something like this. Okay, so yes, that's missing, and this is one of the finest example which is there for the Kalinga style of architecture. Okay, so this is also another example of Kalinga style of architecture. I think from the the expression of architecture you can understand. Can someone name it, that which temple complex it is?
This is Lingaraja.
Absolutely correct. So this is the Lingaraj temple, and as you can see, this is the Garbhagriha basically. I mean, this is the tower on top of Garbhagriha, which is also known as the Rekha Deul, and this is basically the Jagmohan. Okay, and then also there's another thing in case of Kalinga architecture. The temple complexes also had something called the Nat Mandirs. Okay, the Nat Mandapas or the Nat Mandapa and the Bhog Mandapa. Okay, so this is something, I mean, as I said, that mandapas can be something which is, I mean, it can be only one, or it can be in multiple numbers as well. As for example, in Kandariya Mahadeva, we did see that there are, smaller, there's this big Mahamandapa, and in front of that, there are two more mandapas. Okay. Similarly, in case of this particular style of architecture also, So this is the Deul and this is the Jagmohan. So Jagmohan basically covers the mandapa, and in front of the mandapa, there's this a particular, you can, I mean, I don't know whether you can really understand or not, but yes, this is another mandapa which is there in front of the in front of Jagmohan. So this is referred to as the Nat mandapa. Okay, and again in front of that, which is covered by this particular, smaller shrine kind of a thing or something, is the Bhog Mandapa. And if you look at this Lingaraj temple, is of course, I mean, it's a very unique example. Also, you can see generally we see that when we look from, I mean, a person is looking from this particular place, maybe, I mean, the scale of human form which I've drawn is very huge, but I hope you can understand since I can't go back beyond the screen. But yes, so it generally, this particular mandapa should have reached this particular height, but this is not the case for Lingaraj temple. This is some kind of an exception that we see for the Latina style of temples, because in Latina style of temple you can see this verticality increasing step by step as you look from the front. But anyways, this is another example, but it's one of the finest example of the Kalinga temple or Kalinga architecture. Okay, yeah, this one, can someone recognize it? This is this
Brihadeshwara temple.
Brihadeshwara temple, yeah, right. So this is the Brihadeshwara temple. Now Brihadeshwara temple, again, in the lecture, if you all remember, this is again a unique example. The reason is, while I was discussing about the Kutina style of temple architecture, I did mention something about enclosure. So enclosure is not something which you really find in the Latina style. Latina style temples do not have this so-called enclosures. Okay, they are built on platforms, and yes, they are built. Okay, but in case of Kutina style, there's a very very prominent enclosure, and there's something called the entrance ways. So the gopurams. So the gopurams can be from four directions. I mean, the entrance way can be from four directions. I mean, as per the temple plan, that's a different thing. But what's more eye catchy, you can say, in case of the Kutina style, are the gopurams. The gopurams are very very prominent. So as the power of the rulers of the dynasties increased, they increased the height of the gopurams. Okay, they increased the height of the gateways, the entrance ways. Okay, and this entrance ways would be so tall that one can see it from far away places. Okay, so that was the very idea of the Kutina style of temple. And inside there will be the main shrine or the main temple with Garbhagriha and Mandapa, which will be of a very humble size, a very modest expression of architecture. But Brihadeshwara temple is one of the classic example where the the temple shrine, I mean the shikhara, right, or the vimana as we call it in a case of Kutina style of architecture, it is the tallest. Okay, so in fact, this is one of the tallest vimana or the temple tower that we have for the Kutina style of architecture. Okay, so that is why this is a very special kind of an example, you can see, which is not in alignment with the very, very typical Kutina style architecture, Kutina style temple architecture. Okay, this one, although the image is a bit on the hazier side, but if you can, just make out from what this particular temple complex is. This has been discussed in the lecture. Yeah.
Meenakshi temple.
Yes, correct. So this is the Meenakshi temple of Madurai. So
Right.
if you can see this Meenakshi temple, this beautiful tall thing that you can see, the colorful, the ornated one, this is basically the Gopuram. And the actual temple is something, I mean, I think this is the actual temple. I mean, although it's not very prominent from this particular image, but even if you look into the other images also, you'll find, if you whenever you search for Meenakshi temple, or if you have visited Meenakshi temple in person, you'll find the gopurams are very very beautiful. I mean, they are colorful, they are decorated, and within it you will find the temple complex, which is a very humble and a very modest kind of a place. And you'll find, in case of Meenakshi temple, you'll also find a pond, small pond, not pond, but yeah, it's a, yeah, kind of a, stepped well, maybe something that we find it in northern parts of the country. But yes, the gopurams are very very prominent. And also the gopurams might not always have the images or the sculptures of deities. It can be something inspiring, I mean, inspired from something else. But yes, it's very very highly intricately decorated, and they are very very tall, and they can be seen from far away places. Okay, so that's the example of I mean, Meenakshi temple. So yes, that's it from my side. Now I'll ask if you all have any question from your side. I hope you all have understood. Yeah, Lopamudra, you can unmute and ask me. Lopamudra, do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So, my question is not related to the course. It's basically I want a career suggestion from you.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so I am an architect by profession, and I am really into history
Okay.
of history of architecture. So I understand that to pursue, I've been exploring my career again. I want to do higher studies on this, but is it possible that I can, since I am a graduate in architecture, can I do masters in history and sociology? Do you have any clue about it?
Before I answer, Lopamudra, can you just, I mean, I'll just take your question, but before that, I'll take up your question. So
Yeah,
don't
sure.
worry regarding that. But
Okay.
before that, anybody having any other question related to today's class or regarding the lectures, I'll just ask whether you're having a question.
Ma'am, there are few questions which are there in the
Okay.
assignment that we
Yeah.
didn't discuss today. Is
No,
it
we are
planned?
not going to discuss, because we are actually not supposed to discuss those questions and all the
Oh,
questions. I mostly took up the previous year's assignment, although there are some questions which you have seen, that which are asked in this assignment as well. But yes, we won't take up those questions and all the questions. There's also this visual questions, visual assignments that you have seen. Definitely, I
oh,
have not provided the same kind of questions, but yes, I think to some extent you have got the clues. And once
oh,
again, you can just go back to the lectures and you'll find the answers. Okay.
okay, fine.
Fine.
Yeah, got
Yes.
it. Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, yeah. I don't see there are any other questions. So maybe now I can take up Lopamudra's question of how she want to. Yeah. Lopamudra, see, if you are really interested into history of architecture, there are several courses which are provided by different institutions. As for example, I know SEPT has a
Mm.
very, I mean, they have a particular course on history and theories of history, something like this. I don't really remember the name. So maybe you can look into that particular question, that particular course. Okay. And
Okay.
apart from that, if you look into the IITs, of course, IIT Kharagpur do not have one, but yes,
Okay.
IIT Roorkee has one in uh, sorry, what is that? MARC. So MARC is something which is not really exactly just history of architecture. And
Yeah.
also the NITs, as far as I can recall, no one gives specialization in just history. Okay,
Okay.
so maybe you can explore the option of SEPT. That is the only institute I can recall. But yes, maybe you can. I mean, I'm not really the correct person to entirely guide you on that. That's
Okay.
just my very basic perception on it.
Okay. Okay. I was expecting Dr. Pushkar to be here because I see that
Yeah,
he.
Dr. Pushkar sir will. I think there will be one. I mean, at the end there can be one question. There can be one interactive session with sir. Maybe there, sir will be there, and you can definitely have a better answer. That I'm like, I'm not the correct person to exactly give you a
Okay.
proper guidance regarding this.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyways, ma'am, I really enjoyed the session today.
Very good. Thank you so much. Yes, I did see another who rose her hand, Maheshwari, or if I can recall, I just check. Yeah, Maheshwari rose. I hope she's she, and so Maheshwari rose her hand. Maybe any question, Maheshwari?
No, ma'am.
Okay, okay, okay. No issues. Okay, so if you all do not have any more question, so maybe I'll end my session here. Similarly, next week we'll have this similar kind of session, but with the different lectures. I mean, with week two's lecture. Okay. Till then, if you all have any question, do keep it. You can ask in the next session, or you can post it in the discussion forum as well. Okay. Thank you,
Yes,
everyone.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Most welcome, everyone. Have a good day.
You too, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.